Hello, welcome back to the channel of Paul Gross Fine Art. I am Paul Gross. Today I would like to discuss this piece you see in back of me. It is titled Detroit Steel number 5. It is an abstract style painting in oil, approximately 38 by 58, multi-layered. It is titled number 5 due to it being the 5th version of this piece that I've done. And over time, I've thought about, why do I keep revisiting this motif? What is it that has been, sort of popular with some, art buyers over the years? The first one went to a corporate space. The next 3 went to private collectors in a few different places around the country. And this is the 5th version. A few were commissioned. I had sort of thought about, do I want to do it again? Why do I want to do it again? Is it going to be interesting? Will I just be sort of, phoning it in? And often when I start, I sort of go back and forth with those thoughts. Once I get into it, I realize each one of them are very different. The approach is sort of the same, but my decision making changes quite a bit. And although they may seem similar, oh, that's Detroit Steel, I see all 5 of them. They're very much alike. None of them are alike. And the time that is put into these and the thought process is based on the fact that I have repeated it, allow me to take, I think, some more risks. And I was very pleased with this piece in that there are parts of it that do feel spontaneous and not so controlled. Seeing it in person, I think over time, you will get that sort of takeaway. Now, how did I come up with this piece? How did it evolve? So, a handful of years ago, I've been working out some abstract work. I had not done one that seemed sort of this minimal, with this much negative space in it. And so I just started like breaking this line apart, creating this thing. But, these dramatic angles, I had just thought about, I don't know, maybe a stamping plant or something, having grown up around the Southeast Michigan region, working in and out of, being in and out of the Detroit area, some of those kind of Midwest Rust Belt, things that we're exposed to here, Gary, Indiana, Pittsburgh, Detroit, obviously, and there are other places in the country too I've seen, even like places in Germany, Ruhr Valley, those types of, sort of steel towns. Anyway, I thought about, what is it about these areas that are sort of intriguing but polarizing at the same time? And I wanted this to feel, sort of heavy, industrial, something kinetic about it. And how do you say those things on a canvas that is essentially static? It is not kinetic. You can't hear anything. You can't really smell anything. You can't feel any environmental changes in the area. That being, maybe you're driving through one of these regions in the summertime and it's hot out. Another time you may be driving through it in the winter and there's just a lot more steam and smoke and these things coming out of these areas. And there's this sort of emotional takeaway from going through these spaces, these environments. And, since like I said, there isn't, sound, feel, all those things in this. Part of the challenge was, how do I create that visually? How do I get the viewer to look at that and say, yes, I can feel the atmosphere. I can feel and see this, man-made machinery, perhaps steel plant, manufacturing, train cars, rail yards, whatever, being evoked from this image. It seems kind of simple, but it was sort of challenging to do. And over time, I really think I worked it out. There are colors underneath, sort of earth tones that can help warm up the piece. The first one I did was more stark, a little bit more icy. There's texture on here. And I feel with some of these marks that were, deliberate and spontaneous. Sometimes you just let things happen and recognize them for what they are. It's an important mark. It works. But we've all seen these images of, forging metal, melting metal, cranes, things like that. And it seems like there's always like a byproduct of energy in, energy out. And these things sort of expel themselves for whatever is being actually fabricated. And so that's that. You could sort of go into that, and everyone may have their own interpretation of it. But I feel like this is essentially captured those real and imagined takeaways from something like this. With that, ideas emerge, a construct emerge. There's sort of like this balance between order and controlled chaos. And, being an artist, I'll say we, want to talk about other artists also, songwriters, poets, writers, etc. At the end of the day, you need to be a storyteller. This needs to tell a story. It needs to say something. It needs to evoke an emotional response from the viewer. And I feel with this type of work, it isn't immediate necessarily. I've done realism for years. I've done, street scenes with, rails going over neighborhoods, with megaton coal trains, pulling coal through these neighborhoods in Southwest Detroit, or, things like that. And those have their stories. They have their place, and they can be very powerful images. This, I feel, tells the story better than painting a scene from the actual industrial landscape. There are people who have done that over the years. I think Hopper, Whistler, maybe Sheeler, and they do it great, and you can't beat it. There's not a lot that beats it. But, what are you going to say, for yourself? How are you going to tell your own story? There are probably, 500,000 folk guitarists out there who all have a story to tell. And you don't not want to do it because someone like Bob Dylan existed, so, but the main takeaway from this is, at the end of the day, it needs to be an abstract piece of art that holds up independently of whatever it is I say or what I felt like creating it. This piece, happens to be available, handmade, stretcher bars. I put it together myself, stretched the raw canvas, primed it, all of those things, like I often do. And I think it's something that a collector can spend a lot of time with and not tire of. Um, I've worked on this series for close to 10 years now, and I do not tire of it. It takes my imagination to places. It evokes a certain emotional response. Visually, it changes throughout the day from morning. Maybe you get up, you're having a cup of coffee, it's put in a nice space, maybe sort of a sitting type room, and immediately your mind just goes there. Throughout the afternoon or the evening, or it gets, dark out and you turn the light on, this has a very different effect and a different emotion visually. So anyway, I could go on about abstractionism and its importance and its place and its comparison between realism and things like that. But I think everything, does have its place, and this tells the story of this part of the Midwest and my emotional takeaway from it. Better than something that would be realistic. So I hope you enjoyed it. Take a look at my site if you're interested, paulgross.com. It has all my contact information. Feel free to say hi or drop a comment in. These things, de Kooning, I believe, said something to the effect of a painting is never really finished. I just walk away from it. And, when I first heard that, I'm like, okay, maybe that's a little bit pretentious. He was in the New York scene, 50s, 60s, 70s, avant-garde, things were happening, abstraction, abstract expressionism, things like that. I thought, that's like a little bit pretentious. I'm not quite sure about that. But over time, I get it and came to understand it. And you may also. I find that I just stop working on these at some point. Can I mess with them a little bit more? Do musicians finish songs or records and think that's the best it could ever be? I think their timelines, budgets, whatever's going on, and they just need to wrap it up. So some are great, some are mediocre and filler. Metaphorically, I think this would be a hit. This would be a single, if you will, if I was actually making a record. So anyway, hope you have a good day. Thanks for listening. And I thought, just for fun, I've seen videos where people have a guitar or something hanging in the background, but they never play it. So I'm going to pick it up, play a few chords for you, and not make it too painful. Gibson style guitar here. Have a good day.